government, the economy, and each other, often in real times. Mr. Speaker, under Ghanaian law, any entity seeking to establish and operate an FM radio station must first obtain a frequency authorization from the National Communications Authority, the NCA. Per Regulation 54 of the Electronic Communications Regulation 2011 LI 1991, the authorized entity is required to construct and operationalize the station within 2 years of receiving the authorization. Before any station is permitted to go live, the station must invite the NCA to inspect the construction and installation of the station to certify that the station conforms to the standards established by the NCA for radio broadcasting in Ghana. It is upon the grant of the test transmission authorization or a certificate of compliance that the station can commence operation. This process, Mr. Speaker, is not optional. It is the legal foundation for ensuring that our national spectrum is used responsibly, professionally, and in the public interest. Mr. Speaker, the term of an FM radio broadcasting authorization is 5 years. Under Regulation 56 of the ECR 2011, a renewal application must be submitted to the NCA at least 3 months, 90 days before the expiration of the existing authorization. Failure to comply with this 90-day prior timeline results in the application or any new application being treated as a new application before the NCA. In fact, the Electronic Communications Tribunal, chaired by Justice Dateba, affirmed this position in the case of the Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association versus the NCA Appeal Number ECT/APP/002/2017. Mr. Speaker, on 12 February 2025, shortly after I assumed office as the Minister for Communication, Digital Technology and Innovation, I issued a directive to the NCA to produce a complete listing of frequency authorizations granted or renewed within the preceding 60 days. The objective of the audit was to produce an accurate and up-to-date inventory of all assigned, unassigned, and unauthorized frequency holdings in Ghana. It sought to identify cases of spectrum hoarding, detect underutilized frequency bands, and strengthen enforcement action against entities operating outside the law. Mr. Speaker, alarming revelations unearthed by the initial exercise necessitated me to expand this directive to a nationwide forensic audit of all FM broadcasting authorizations aimed at discharging our sacred duty to manage state assets with integrity. This is part of our Operation Recover or Loot initiative, ORAL. Mr. Speaker, the NCA's audit showed several cases of non-compliance with the regulation and conditions of broadcasting authorization. The preliminary audit revealed over 600 active radio stations with frequencies, many of which were inactive, expired, or improperly renewed. Mr. Speaker, as of this morning, the NCA has commenced phase 2 of our regulatory enforcement following the broadcasting regulation frequency audit. This phase targets several categories of non-compliant FM stations whose operations contravene existing laws and regulations and includes the following. Group 1, 28 FM radio stations who are currently operating with expired authorizations. Despite the NCA instructing these stations to cease operations in 2024, several of these stations have continued broadcasting unlawfully. These actions constitute a violation of Section 2.4 of the Electronic Communications Act 2008. Group 2, 14 FM stations, which were issued notices of revocation for failure to establish operations within the required 2-year period following the grant of their authorizations. These stations later requested technical inspections but have not completed the process and have continued to broadcast in violation of Regulation 54 of the Electronic Communications Regulation LI 1991. Group 3, 13 FM stations which applied for authorization to continue operating and have been issued provisional authorization but have not settled the provisional authorization fees in full. Mr. Speaker, without payment of these fees, their authorizations are invalid and their broadcast is a violation of Section 2(4) of Act 775. The last group of stations that we took action on this morning are 7 FM stations who have paid their provisional authorization fees but have not yet received final authorization in fulfillment of the technical and regulatory requirements under Regulation 54 of LI 1911. Mr. Speaker, spectrum is a finite and highly valuable national resource. It is a public good held in trust for the people of Ghana. Those granted access must therefore comply strictly with all applicable legislations. Mr. Speaker, a few minutes ago, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, the President, directed that the Ministry of Communications, Digital Technology and Innovation work with the regulator, the NCA, to allow all the affected radio stations some additional time to correct the identified breaches within a defined time frame. Those who fail to do so shall have their authorizations formally revoked under the law. In line with this directive from His Excellency the President, the Ministry and the NCA have granted a further 30-day grace period to all defaulting entities. Mr. Speaker, this is not the same as the arbitrary revocations and hefty fines imposed under the previous administration. As the current government, the Ministry has also been instructed to waive all the applicable fines that should have been applied to the defaulting entities. Mr. Speaker, since morning, I have received calls from colleagues on both sides of the aisle, notifying me that some interests they may hold have been affected by the ongoing exercise. Dear honorable colleagues, we passed the laws and have a high bar set for ourselves as honorable members of this august house. We need to lead the way with exemplary conduct. As a ministry and regulator, we are status agnostic and will be fair to everyone irrespective of ethnic, religious, political, or social affiliation. Mr. Speaker, let me, just for the records, name the stations that have been affected. Table 1, FM stations that have been issued expiry of authorization letters for failure to apply for renewal. Number 1, Life World Broadcast Limited, operating in Ofinso on 94.3 FM. 2, Akpini Communication Limited, operating in Pando on 96.7 FM. 3, Victory FM in Aflao, operating on 96.1 FM. 4, Oracle Multimedia, operating in Nadoli on 88.5 FM. 5, Jewel Group Limited in Duaya Kwanta, operating on 102.7. 6, Bolton Portfolio Limited, operating in Nkoko on 96.9 FM. 7, the Ghana Institute of Journalism, operating in Accra on 97.7 FM. 8, Obrempong FM, operating in Agona Swedru on 91.7 FM. 9, KD Community Multimedia, operating in Kede on 92.5 FM. 10, Skoja Limited, operating in Joje on 94.5 FM. 11, Press Express Limited, also known as Daily Guide, operating in Accra on 91.5 FM. Obra FM Limited, operating in Takrady on 89.3 FM. Unity Broadcasting Limited, operating in Impoho, 88.7 FM. Jimas FM Limited, operating in Yeji, 102.3 FM. Kantanka Media Limited, operating in Cape Coast, 92.1 FM. Bewa Radio, operating in Yendi, 106.5 FM. Unique Gateway Communication Limited, operating in Nkoko, 105.7 FM. Ken International Company Limited, operating in Achim Swedru, 89.1 FM. Dreams Ghana Media, operating in New Abrim, 104.9 FM. Velvet Beam Foundation, operating in Asankragua, 92.9 FM. Magic Group Company, operating in Salaga, 101.9 FM. Don Plus Multimedia, operating in Ho, 105.9 FM. Teslite Company Limited, operating in Wa, 96.7 FM. Global Media, Tepa, 97.3 FM. IMAX Media, Tamale, 104.3 FM. Limanya Radio, Wa, 95.7 FM. Pandai Star Radio, operating in Pandai, 107.3 FM. Ebiamo FM, operating in Jomoro, on 100.5 FM. They've all been shut down. Table 2, FM stations that were issued revocation notices. Act Forum Ghana Limited, operating in Akpafumimpiasem, 88.1 FM. Chinias Empire Limited, operating in Tumu, 96.3 FM. Confidence Commodities, operating in Swaman, Dadieso, 90.7. F5 Eagles Company, operating in Ajuafua, 93.7. NEAT FM Limited, operating in Tamale, 105.3 FM. Primary Stars Limited, operating in Banda, 102.5 FM. Subampa Community Radio in Barakesi, 96.7 FM. Wasaman FM in Atieku on 101.9 FM. Mr. Speaker, number 9, Wuntumi Multimedia Company Limited. Wuntumi Multimedia Company Limited, operating in Takrady on 101.3 FM. Number 10, Wuntumi Multimedia Company Limited, operating in Accra on 95.9 FM. Jimbali Community Association in Jimbali, 95.9. Kingdom Dynamic, Kukrantumi, 93.3. Pro Royal Investment in Tepa, 94.7. And Resurrection Television in Takrady, 99.3. Table 3, Siadarak Enterprise in Edukrom, 95.5. Bangu Company, Tamale, 97.3. Jam Multimedia in Kintampo, 101.3. Chameleon Communication in Wa, 91.1. Chaka Multimedia in Jasikan, 88.7. Clickshot Multimedia in Shama, 89.9. Free Minds in Tema, 104.5. Gemsak Media Network in Nswatre, 103.3. Mediacast Limited in Kumasi, 102.5. Mobile Zone in Bolgatanga, 94.3. Ultimate Multimedia in Tamale on 107.1. West FM in Ho on 97.5. Western Salam Company Limited in Takrady, 89.7. And Mr. Speaker, the final table, 7 stations. Asasi Broadcasting Company Limited in Accra on 99.5 FM. Dynamic Chapters Limited in Wenchi on 95.7. Global Media Alliance in Accra on 98.9. God Steve Media Association in Atimpoku on 87.7. Rejoice FM in Mim on 101.7. Sankofa in Takrady on 98.7. And Sweet FM in Chifopraso on 106.5. Mr. Speaker, our goal is not punishment, but accountability, order, and the responsible stewardship of a public critical resource. This is not routine housekeeping. This is a declaration against impunity, abuse, and inertia. The airwaves do not belong to the powerful and connected. They belong to the public, and we are duty-bound to govern them transparently and effectively. Our fight is not against free speech. It is against lawlessness, asset misappropriation, and regulatory defiance. I remain committed to reclaiming what rightfully belongs to the Ghanaian people and laying the foundations for a fair, modern, and technologically equipped broadcasting sector. Once again, Mr. Speaker, due to the clemency His Excellency the President has asked for, there is 30 days from today for all defaulting media houses to rectify their defaults and breaches. And Mr. Speaker, the ministry has shown that we are willing to reinstate. Earlier this year, we shut down 6 media houses who have all rectified their breaches and they have been reinstated. We urge the defaulting media houses to take advantage of the President's clemency for 30 days. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Sunrise
conducts his business within the media fraternity, the Inky fraternity, with great felicity of style, and he's joined us on the phone line. His name is Suleiman Ibrahima, Media Foundation for West Africa. Sule, good morning. Assalam.
Alaikum salam. Johnny, how are you?
I am learning, senior.
Okay, great.
Now, the Minister for Communication was in Parliament yesterday announcing to the whole world that the President has given a grace period. He insisted that it is not punishment, but it is to make sure that the law is followed to the letter. What are initial thoughts about what's happening now?
Well, I think that to start with, as a country, we've decided that we should be governed by laws, and I believe that every country in the world is governed by laws. And when these laws are made, they are supposed to be complied with. If you look at the media ecosystem,
right,
there are various pieces of legislation that are supposed to regulate how we operate, and that is meant to bring sanity and ensure that those who decide that that is the business they want to venture into can do it properly. That is why I cannot get up today and decide to grab the frequency that you are transmitting or broadcasting on,
right,
to just start broadcasting. And so I think that people who decide to access frequencies and are granted frequency authorization are supposed to go by the terms and conditions and the rules governing the authorization. And so if the regulator decides that it wants to enforce the rules, I think that it's in order. For us, as we've always maintained, what is important is in doing so, it is done fairly, transparently, and in a non-partisan way.
right.
In 2019, when it was done, we had issues because quite clearly it was a political thing that they were doing. So on this occasion, if it is fair and transparent, why not? We cannot say that the laws should exist but not work.
Now, for the media houses who are affected, they have 30 days within which to honor this grace period and to bounce back. But we have a history that stations are not making as much as they want to make to be able to satisfy these prerequisites of the law that must qualify them to broadcast on air. How should the government proceed going forward if this grace period expires and people are not still able to pay?
Well, I think that if you look at the statement issued yesterday by the NCA, there are different categories of infractions.
That's
there
correct.
Are some of them that are not about payment of the authorization fees. Some of them, first of all, their licenses have expired and they have failed to renew, and certainly you shouldn't be broadcasting when you don't have a frequency authorization. That is the law. And like I said, if that were to be allowed, then talk can decide to grab the frequency that 3FM is using to broadcast. So the next day you tune into that frequency and you are perhaps hearing different stations.
Right.
Then there are those who had already paid and were given provisional license pending inspections, and the inspections had not been completed, and they are doing full broadcast.
Right.
So those are also not about payment. And of course, there are others who must make payments. And I think that 30 days is good enough period for them to be able to remedy whatever situation they find themselves in. If a station is unable to pay for the frequency authorization,
right,
the point then is, how would such a station then be able to employ people to do professional media broadcasts? So it's either you have the capacity to do the work, or you don't do it at all.
I see. Let me bring in Mr. Cecil Sunkwa-Mills of the GIBA. Cecil, thank you very much for your time. Good morning.
Good morning, Johnny, and good morning to my brother Sule and their listeners.
Morning.
Some of your the members of the association are crying for help. They say, yes, they have been given a grace period, but some of them cannot pay within the period. What do you say as leader of the pack of media houses that have to now face the law because the law is the law?
Thank you, Johnny.
Yes, sir.
I think, well, first of all, just a bit of clarity.
Right.
There are quite a large number of stations in this country.
Right.
GIBA has a membership of about 300.
Okay.
So there are some stations that are not directly our members.
Okay.
However, in pursuit of what we do, whatever we achieve, actually impacts the whole industry. And that has always been the focus. So now to your question.
Yes, sir.
Within these 30 days, we believe that the NCA will look at it case on case. And we've asked stations who have reached out to us who have challenges, whether they be members or not. I think you should go ahead and speak to the NCA. Remember that the law is the law.
Right.
Before you decided to start a media business, I'm sure they must have checked what is involved. Besides it being media, it is also a business. So the viability is something that they must have had in mind. So they should speak to the NCA. I know in some cases, even if they have a projection, there are payment plans made. But to say you cannot, basically, if you cannot pay, that is a bit tough because you are using frequency and you must at least pay something.
Right. So you were saying something. I didn't hear you clearly.
No. I think you can go ahead.
Okay. So now the question is to you, Sule. The appeals have been made. For those who listen to these radio and TV stations who get their content and information from these stations, they will be worried and disturbed that their favorite stations will now not be on air. Should the timeline be extended for them 30 days? Should it be more?
Well, Johnny, I think perhaps maybe we are trying to jump the gun. Let stations that feel they have legitimate concerns about meeting the requirements within the 30 days engage with the authorities and the ministry. And I'm sure if those concerns are legitimate, certainly there would be some considerations. And of course, we would be happy if indeed we find that certain concerns are truly legitimate, and therefore those stations need to be considered to be back on air. Now, if you look at some of the major stations, for example, I know Ago FM in Koko is part of the EID network owned by Dr. Kobina Dufo. I don't think that it's a capacity issue in terms of being able to make whatever payment or whatever remedial measures that they have to adopt. Akwini FM, which is in Pando, is owned by Delasoa, who is a former MP.
Honorable Delasoa, that's right.
Yes, Honorable Delasoa. There is Nyansapo FM in Shama, which is owned by the current fisheries minister.
Right.
I think that if it is payment, she cannot pay. Asase is owned by Gabi and perhaps others. I don't think that is a question of inability to pay. And of course, they are even in a category that is not about payment. It's about they haven't not met the deadline in terms of when they were supposed to renew, and then being granted authorization that is considered fresh license, and therefore you have to go through the process of test transmission inspections and all of that. So I really don't think that any station that really has the capacity to do media business would have a limitation or inability to fulfill whatever requirements they have to fulfill within the 30 days that have been granted.
Now, Mr. Sunkwa-Mills, I come to you now. There are those who also suggest that this is laden with politics and it is a gag on the press, against press freedom. What do you say?
I think before getting into media business, which we know how much the Constitution cherishes this business and we know its purpose. But before you get into it, you know the requirements. And if we look at the stations that have been affected in this and the details of what has caused them to be on this list, it's very difficult to see anything political at this stage. And in fact, Sule has mentioned some of the owners of these stations.
Right.
You know, it's a mix. And there are some that are private individuals. And the reasons have been made very clear. You know, some are financial, some are not, some just have not met some administrative requirements for being in this business. So we actually do not see that. And I think, the intervention of the president may also change this political swing of the action taken.
Right.
However, one of the things that I mentioned that I think is worth having a discussion. Today, we may have had the president of the land intervene. What if we had a situation, because government will change, what if there's a situation where the president does not intervene? Who or which entity can bring about such intervention? You know, because we realize that the offenses varied anyway. They all broke the law, we understand. But for somebody, probably a station not being not meeting financial requirement from 2023 till date, it's different from somebody who has not been able to submit a fire certificate and a tax clearance certificate. The gravities vary. So we need to also just look at how we can create other systems after this cleanup to kind of distinguish and provide internal support in this process, where the media will not be gagged and those who have smaller challenges, if I should call it that, can be actually giving a bit of a rope. That is a concern for the future.
Sule, your closing thoughts as we wrap up this conversation. What do you leave us with?
Well, I think it's important to continue to seek ways in sanitizing the airways and the media landscape for that matter. I think increasingly people are becoming quite concerned about the cacophony within our media landscape, the disregard for professionalism, disregard for standards and all of that in our media landscape. And what will make it worse if we begin to entertain impunity, where we say, well, people can abuse the law and nothing happens. Our principal job as Media Foundation is to promote press freedom of expression. But that does not mean that people should do just anything they want in the name of press freedom or freedom of expression.
Right.
So let's all abide by the law.
Thank you, Suleiman Abrahama, Executive Director of Media Foundation for us. We're grateful, Sule. Thank you. Mr. Sunkwa Mills, you have the closing thoughts. What do you share?
Johnny, after this exercise, I think the next thing we need to look at is how we can move the broadcasting bill, because currently, for our media landscape, it's very difficult to separate the platforms from the content. So we need to have a hybrid situation where probably the NMC and the NCA are able to work together, because after what is happening now, we also have issues to do with content regulation that we need to improve the media landscape.
Right.
So I'm looking forward to that as the next step.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cecil Thomas Sunkwa Mills, President of GIBA, of which we are proud members. We greet you this morning, sir.